You have always been told that limitations are a curse on your lives and on your creativity. You go to therapies to free yourself from the limitations of society, family, and yourself. You even meet the shadow beast to resolve the limitations of your ego consciousness, to incorporate those unacceptable parts of yourself into consciousness, to integrate, to become whole. Limitations are bad, period. But imagine we resolve all the limitations in our lives. Imagine a life without a border, without an end, without a line around it to define it as your life. Imagine yourself without the quotation marks that separate you from the rest. Imagine pure insight, pure shapeless and formless imagination. Imagine you were given all the time in the world to write that book you always wanted to write, or make that dream of yours come true. Imagine a utopian world with no conflict. Imagine a world without any limits. Imagine the reality without a line around it. Imagine that when you look around, you don't see trees and windows, but things, shapeless, formless things. What are you left with? Pure matter, pure chaos. What happens in chaos? Madness, immaturity, incompleteness, undefinability. A lack of limitations leads to chaos. The inability to define limitations leads to psychosis. A form shapes chaos. A form gives construction to the amorphous substance. The vision of an infinite piece of meat is the vision of the mad. But if I cut that meat into pieces and parcel them out over days and over hungers, then it would no longer be perdition and madness. It would once again be humanized life. Clarice Lispector. Could it be that limitations are not all that bad, but they can actually be necessary for life and creativity? Could it be that life, maturity, and creativity only happen when chaos and limitation meet? Rollo May, the existential psychologist, has an inspiring response to these questions. But before getting to that, let us see who was Rollo May. Rollo May was an American existential psychologist. He was known for his significant contributions to understanding the complexities of human existence and the search for meaning in the face of existential challenges. He emphasized the importance of individual freedom and responsibility in shaping one's destiny, asserting that individuals possess the power to create their own identities. May's work drew heavily from existentialist philosophy, incorporating the ideas of thinkers like Soren Kierkegaard and Jean-Paul Sartre. He wrote several influential books such as Love and Will and The Courage to Create. This video is inspired by his work, The Courage to Create, where May explores the nature of the creative process. Here's the thought: creativity, and we can expand this to any sort of meaningful life, arises out of the tension between spontaneity and limitations. Limiting and expanding go together. On the one hand, leaving your work solely to spontaneity is like trying to build a puzzle without knowing its frame or structure. You end up with fragmented pieces of insight, without a form, without depth, without maturity. Full spontaneity is similar to a child's play or art. Children have unlimited imagination when they draw or play, but whatever comes out of their unlimited imagination lacks depth and maturity. It is true that without constraints, creativity runs wild, but the result will lack form and coherence. If someone gives you a blank sheet and tells you to start writing, you will be clueless about what to put down. You might sit there for hours not knowing where to start or what to write about. An absolute lack of limitations leads to chaos, to psychosis. It cripples the mind. Our minds need to create patterns, orders, and forms out of the raw material and thoughts. I might sit here for hours letting my imagination fly only to write down disconnected fragments that spontaneously pop into my mind. Formless, purposeless pieces of thoughts and insights without any constraints. But without imposing a form that is a limitation on these fragments of thoughts, I am left with structureless and incommunicable bits and pieces, not knowing how to make sense of them. As Rollo May says, the limits are as necessary as those provided by the banks of a river, without which the water would be dispersed on the earth and there would be no river. Just as riverbanks shape the water's flow, limitations provide a framework for creativity. guiding it toward meaningful expression. On the other hand, if you don't have spontaneity and leave your work in the hands of limitations alone, such as templates, beat sheets, rigid rules, and unbendable structures, then your work will be mechanical, lifeless, and spiritless. Form is a necessary limitation for creative work, but form without spontaneity is conformity. An example of this is the popular beat sheet for writing stories and movie scripts. Beat sheets are supposed to be the template for successful and engaging stories and movies. Following such templates just leads to the production of a whole lot of predictable and repetitive and spiritless stories and movies. Limitation and spontaneity go hand in hand. Spontaneity generates the insight. Limitation materializes it, matures it, and turns it into a work of genius. Shedding the limitations is the initial step to finding your voice, but in order to create a mature art form, limitations are necessary. Once you go beyond conventional limitations and experience chaos, you should impose your limitations on the chaos in order to create something meaningful. Not conformism, but having a form. Not a forced limitation, but an intentional one. Some limitations are life-imposed, the conditions of life one is born into, for instance, poverty, disability, oppression from society and family, and societal norms. Creativity does not arise from denying these limitations or trying to surpass them, but rather from accepting them. Ludwig van Beethoven composed masterpieces of music even after his complete deafness. Roberto Bolaño got serious about his novel writing only after he found out he had a fatal liver disease in his 40s. And in a span of few years, he wrote masterpieces of literature, some of which were only published after his death. Would he have written all these masterpieces if he had not lived like a walking dead for many years? Perhaps his close touch with death, with the utmost limitation of life, made his works deeply touching. If we are not aware of death, if we don't have death's eyes sewn on our lives, we will never get anything done. We will stare at life going mad with chaos. Creativity is a struggle between spontaneity and limitation, not only in the process of making it, but in the content of the work. A work of genius depicts the limitations of their present time. What the true artists see are the confines of existence, of life, of being a human, and the hope to free themselves from those confines. A life without limitations is not utopia but chaos. Meaningful life and creativity are born amidst spontaneity and limitations.